Raise your hand if you've ever been stuck waiting for someone to come back who left you hanging. Yeah, I see you. And I know that feeling. It's like being trapped in a never-ending loop, replaying memories, looking for signs, making excuses. But here's the truth you need to hear today. They are not coming back. And that's the best thing that could ever happen to you. An avoidant person doesn't leave because they need a little space to think. They leave because space is their default mode. It's their comfort zone. It's where they feel safest. And the moment a relationship starts demanding emotional depth, real intimacy, or vulnerability, their internal alarm system goes off. You need to understand this. It's not personal. It's not about whether you were enough or whether you did something wrong. This is how they are wired. Avoidants don't experience love the way secure or anxious individuals do. For most people, love is about connection, trust, and partnership. But for avoidants, love feels like a loss of control. It feels like suffocation. The closer they get to someone emotionally, the more their subconscious mind associates that closeness with danger. Maybe they grew up in a household where love was conditional. Maybe their emotional needs weren't met as kids, so they learned that relying on people is unsafe. Whatever the case, they developed a defense mechanism. Distance equals safety. Now, here's where so many people get stuck. They believe that if they just give their avoidant ex some time, if they're patient, if they show that they're different, the ex will come back. But that's not how it works. The more you wait for them, the more they confirm to themselves that leaving was the right choice. See, when an avoidant walks away, they don't sit around missing you the way you miss them. They disconnect. They compartmentalize. They rationalize why being alone is better for them. And the more time that passes, the more they convince themselves that returning would mean stepping back into something suffocating. And here's the kicker. Avoidants often don't consciously understand this themselves. They're not sitting there thinking, I have attachment issues, so I need to leave. No, instead, they come up with rationalizations. The relationship was too much. I just need space. I'm better off alone. I don't want to hurt them. These are just stories they tell themselves to justify their actions. But the root of it all is their fear of intimacy. You cannot logic your way into changing this. You cannot prove your worth enough to override their wiring. You cannot love them into healing. That's their journey. That's their responsibility. And the hard truth is, they're not coming back because staying away is what feels safe to them. No amount of waiting, hoping, or what-if scenarios will change that. The more you chase an avoidant, the faster they run. That's not an opinion. It's how their attachment system is wired. Think about it like this. When someone fears emotional closeness, every active pursuit, every text, every attempt to reconnect reinforces their belief that being in a relationship means losing themselves. The moment they feel you reaching for them, their instinct isn't to move closer, it's to bolt. Not because they don't care, but because connection triggers something deep within them that screams, danger, get out. You've probably noticed this pattern before. At the start of the relationship, they were engaged, interested, maybe even the one doing the pursuing. But the moment things started feeling too real, the moment the bond deepened, they started pulling away. And what did you do? You tried to close the gap. You texted more, asked them what was wrong, tried to fix things, and every time you reached out, they withdrew even further. Not because they wanted to hurt you, but because your need for connection was clashing with their need for emotional distance. It's like a rubber band pulling in opposite directions. The harder you pull them in, the more resistance they feel, and eventually that rubber band snaps. That's when they leave. And here's the most painful part. When you chase after them, when you beg for answers, when you try to remind them of how great things were, they don't see it as love. They see it as pressure. They see it as proof that they made the right decision to walk away. And so they shut down even more. This is why no amount of effort will bring them back, because to an avoidant, pursuit doesn't read as affection, it reads as a threat. And the more you try to convince them to stay, the more they convince themselves that leaving was the best choice they could have made. They will twist reality in their mind to justify their actions. They will tell themselves, see, this is why I left, too much, too intense, I need to be alone, and the cycle continues. The mistake most people make is believing that if they just explain their feelings the right way if they just find the perfect words, their avoidant ex will get it and come back. But that's not how this works. The truth is, the more energy you spend chasing, the faster they'll make their exit. Because for them, love and closeness don't bring comfort. Distance does. Your avoidant ex doesn't miss you. They miss the version of you that existed in their mind. The idealized, easygoing, low mincement version who didn't need too much, didn't ask for reassurance, and didn't challenge their walls. At the beginning of the relationship, they felt drawn to you because you represented possibility, excitement, and connection on their terms. But the moment you showed deeper emotions, the moment you needed closeness, their illusion shattered. Suddenly, you weren't just a fantasy anymore. You were a real person with real feelings, and that was too much for them. Avoidants live in a world where distance is safety, and the moment reality intrudes on their idealized version of you, they start pulling away. They were comfortable with the idea of you, not the full complexity of an actual relationship. That's why they could be so charming and engaged in the beginning, but then suddenly turn cold when things became serious. It wasn't about you changing. It was about them realizing that love requires vulnerability. And vulnerability is their greatest fear. Even if they do come back, they're not coming back for the real, raw, authentic version of you. They're coming back because they're chasing their version of you, the one they convinced themselves they wanted before things got too close. And this is why the cycle repeats. The moment things start feeling real again, the moment emotions get involved, they get triggered and retreat. They aren't looking for depth, they're looking for comfort. And comfort to them means control over their emotions. This is why so many people get stuck in an on-again, off-again loop with an avoidant ex. Every time they come back, you think this time will be different. This time they see my value. But the truth is, they're not returning for a deep, intimate connection. They're returning for the honeymoon phase, for the part where they still feel in control. And once the emotional reality of the relationship sets in again, they'll leave again because they never truly wanted you. They wanted a version of love that doesn't exist, one that asks nothing of them, one that doesn't require them to confront their own fears. And the hardest truth to accept, even if they do miss you, even if they feel pangs of nostalgia, they won't act on it. Because missing you isn't the same as wanting a real, deep relationship with you. They don't long for you. They long for the feeling you gave them before things got real. And that's why they never stay.
Avoidants will always choose comfort over growth. That's the core of why they left and why they won't come back. Growth requires facing fears, confronting uncomfortable emotions, and doing the hard work of unlearning patterns that keep them stuck. Keep them stuck. But avoidants aren't wired to lean into discomfort. They're wired to escape it. They've spent their entire lives mastering the art of emotional distance, convincing themselves that self-sufficiency is strength, and that needing someone is a weakness. To come back to you would mean confronting the very thing they've been running from their whole lives. Intimacy. And most of them aren't willing to do that. When an avoidant leaves a relationship, they tell themselves a story that makes them feel justified. It was too much. I need space. I'm better off alone. This isn't necessarily a conscious choice. It's a survival mechanism. The deeper truth is, they don't trust themselves to handle closeness. They don't believe they can meet your emotional needs without losing themselves in the process. So rather than face that fear, they take the easy way out, they shut down, they rationalize, they detach. This is their comfort zone. And comfort for them isn't just about physical space. It's about emotional numbness. The more distance they create, the more they feel in control. If they allow themselves to be vulnerable, if they acknowledge the pain of leaving, then they have to admit that their choices are hurting them too. Instead of doing that, they shut the door completely. They bury their feelings, tell themselves they made the right choice, and distract themselves with work, hobbies, or even new people. Because realization requires self-awareness, and self-awareness requires growth. And growth requires being willing to sit with discomfort and work through the fears that keep them emotionally unavailable. But most avoidants aren't ready for that. They will always choose what feels safe over what forces them to evolve. Even if they do come back, it's not because they've changed. It's because their comfort zone has shifted. Shifted. Maybe they got lonely. Maybe they missed the validation of being wanted. Or maybe they just wanted to see if you were still there. But the moment things start requiring emotional effort again, they will retreat. Because at the end of the day, they aren't looking for growth. They're looking for relief, and that's why they always run. You are the prize, not an option. But the moment your avoidant ex walked away, you started believing the opposite. You started thinking that if only you were different, if only you had done something better, they would have stayed. That's the biggest lie you could ever tell yourself. Because the truth is, they didn't leave because you weren't enough. They left because they never saw relationships the way you do. They don't operate from the same emotional foundation. And the more you put them on a pedestal, the more you reinforce the false idea that their validation is what gives you worth. But your worth was never in their hands. It was always in yours. The mistake so many people make is waiting. Waiting for the text, waiting for the apology, waiting for the moment when the avoidant finally wakes up and realizes that you were the best thing that ever happened to them. But that moment never comes. Not because you weren't valuable, not because you weren't worth loving, but because an avoidance is not about you. It's about them. They don't leave because you lack something. They leave because intimacy feels like a burden to them. And no matter how much love you offer, no matter how much you prove your worth, they won't choose you in the way you deserve to be chosen. The problem is, when someone repeatedly makes you feel like you are not a priority, you start believing them. You start shrinking. You start bending, compromising, lowering your standards just for the chance that maybe, just maybe, they'll see your value and come back. But that's not love. That's self-betrayal. You cannot keep handing yourself over to someone who only sees you as an option while you treat them like they're the prize. That's the dynamic that keeps you stuck. That's the cycle that keeps you questioning. The moment you stop waiting, the moment you truly understand that their inability to show up has nothing to do with your value, you reclaim your power. You shift from seeking external validation to realizing that you were always enough. You were always enough. And that's when everything changes. Because when you recognize that you are the prize, you will never again settle for someone who treats you like anything less. You won't need closure. You won't need closure. You won't need an explanation. You'll just walk away because the real prize isn't getting an avoidant ex back. It's realizing that you were never meant to wait for someone who wasn't capable of staying. The truth you needed to hear today is this: your avoidant ex is not coming back, and that is the greatest gift you could ever receive. I know it doesn't feel that way right now. I know there's a part of you still holding on, still replaying memories, still hoping for that one moment where they wake up and realize what they lost. But you must understand that the very thing you are waiting for is the thing that will never happen. And not because you did something wrong, but because they are wired to avoid the very intimacy you crave. And no matter how much you give, no matter how much you prove, no matter how much you love, you will never be able to force someone to choose you when their deepest instinct is to run from connection, is to run from connection. You have spent so much time trying to understand them, trying to figure out why they act the way they do, why they disappear, why they don't miss you the way you miss them. But now it's time to shift that focus. Because the real question isn't about them. It's about you. Why are you waiting for someone who never made you feel secure? Why are you longing for someone who made you question your worth? Why are you making them the center of your story when they treated you like a side note in theirs? These are the hard questions, the ones that force you to look inward instead of outward. And the moment you answer them honestly, you will see the truth. You were never supposed to be waiting. You were supposed to be rising. The most painful thing about being with an avoidant is the way they slowly convince you that love is supposed to feel like uncertainty, like distance, like a puzzle you have to solve. But real love doesn't feel like that. Real love doesn't feel like that. Real love doesn't make you beg. It doesn't make you question. It doesn't leave you in a constant state of waiting. Love is supposed to feel safe, secure, and mutual. And if that wasn't what you had, then you weren't losing a love that was meant for you. You were losing an illusion. And illusions were never meant to last. Now, you have a choice. You can keep waiting, keep hoping, keep shrinking yourself in the process. Or you can step into the version of you that refuses to be a second choice. You can reclaim your power. You can let go of the idea that closure comes from them, and instead create your own closure. Not by getting an apology. Not by getting them back, but by realizing that the version of you who still waits for them is not the version of you who will thrive. Growth comes when you stop looking behind you and start walking forward. And the second you do, everything changes. Because the real prize isn't them, it's you. The moment you fully understand that, you will never again settle for less than you deserve. You will never again accept breadcrumbs when you were meant for a feast. You will never again chase after someone who is running in the opposite direction. Instead, you will attract someone who is running toward you. Someone who is ready. Someone who chooses you fully. Someone who doesn't make you question your worth. And when that moment comes, you will look back at this chapter not with regret, but with gratitude. Gratitude. Because losing them wasn't the tragedy you thought it was. It was the beginning of your freedom. Thank you for taking the time to hear this message today. My hope is that something in these words sparked a shift within you, a realization, a moment of clarity, or even just a sense of empowerment to move forward. You deserve love that is secure, mutual, and fulfilling. You deserve to be chosen, not chased. And most importantly, you deserve to see yourself as the prize, because that is exactly what you are. As you walk away from this experience, remember, your power is in your ability to let go, to rise above, and to embrace the future that is waiting for you. No more waiting for someone to see your worth. No more settling for less than you deserve. No more questioning whether you were enough. You were always enough. It was never about you. It was about them. And now, it's about reclaiming your story, your strength, and your happiness. So, stand tall. Step forward and never again waste your time waiting for someone who is never willing to stay. The best is ahead of you, not behind you. And the sooner you step into your worth, the sooner you'll attract the love that was truly meant for you. Thank you for listening, for showing up for yourself, and for being here today. You are stronger than you think, more valuable than you realize, and more deserving of love than you have ever been told. Keep rising, keep rowing, and never settle for anything less than the love you truly deserve. Goodbye for now, and may your journey ahead be filled with self-love, strength, and the kind of happiness that no one can ever take away from you. Ew.